Okay.
We're going to continue with our next session. We've been talking about omnichannel all through the day. The trouble for most retailers is that those lines between channels are getting more and more blurred. It's no longer a question of should you be brick and mortar, should you be online, should you be a hybrid of both. You have to consider every possibility there is, including some that you haven't thought of as yet. Customers expect you to be able to address their needs, whether it's in the aisles, whether it's in the dressing room, or whether it's at home. So, what are retailers around the world doing in order to address this? Our next session is going to cover how leading retailers are innovating with the omnichannel experience, what they're doing with machine learning, and how all of that is allowing them to deliver an exceptional shopping experience. So would you please welcome on stage the Senior Director for the Center of Excellence for Digital Customer Engagement at SAP Hybris, Ben Nottle.
So thank you everybody very much for spending the time with us this afternoon, and thanks very much for ARF for having me and for the opportunity to present. I have the pleasure of spending much time around the region in Asia. I'm personally based in Singapore, and speaking with top retailers around the region around their strategies in engaging with digitally connected customers. And we do see a commonality across the region in the way in which organizations are engaging with customers. But for me, to be in India and to be a part of this event is fantastic, because the level of innovation and the pace of innovation that we see in the market in India is absolutely second to none. So for me, it's incredibly exciting to be a part of this discussion and to hear what the leading retailers in India are doing and how we're transforming business to become omnichannel businesses. I think I wanted to start the discussion by talking about some of the observations that we see around the region. And one of the first observations I have, that typically when we start this discussion on digital transformation, we see the discussion starting with three key brands. And I think we've all seen these brands before, and I think we've all seen the involvement of these brands in this discussion. But I want you to take a moment to think to yourself. I think I've got a problem with the sound, don't I? Here we go. Okay, I think I have the lapel mic working now. So let me ask you the question, what is it that these brands have in common? I can't hear, so I'm going to guess. They've all, you're right, they've all got very strong digital brands. They've all completely transformed their categories. We've all heard about how Uber doesn't own any cars and Airbnb doesn't own any hotels. But for me, the interesting thing about these brands is that they're all startup businesses, right? So we don't hear about the 10,000 other businesses that tried to make an attempt to enter this space and weren't successful. We hear about these particular brands, and we hear about how, yes, they've transformed their markets, but we don't hear how they've transformed themselves as organizations. And that is a clue to the answer to my next question, what is it that these brands have in common? Right, so the brands that we have here are organizations that have completely transformed their categories, but they've transformed them as established businesses. Okay, so if we look at the likes of Under Armour, we have an apparel company that's completely transformed its category to become a fitness and a lifestyle company. Under Armour has launched their concept called MyFitness, which is their engagement platform from a fitness perspective. And through that platform, they have built up an engagement with 150 million consumers. And since they've launched that platform, those consumers have logged 6.5 billion meals and 1.5 billion exercises. So you can imagine, with the power of the database that Under Armour is able to build up, the level of personalization that they're able to have with their consumers, and therefore the type of new business models that they start to venture into. I think Apple needs no introduction. Clearly we have a consumer electronics organization that's completely transformed itself to an organization that is obsessed with the customer experience and the way in which it's engaging with the customer. I think Jio is a fantastic local example here of an established organization, Reliance, that has completely transformed the telecom space, is now transforming the retail space from a digital perspective. But I think from me, what will be most interesting here will be in the impact in the market of the increased level of personalization of the consumers in India that have access to smartphone and engagement. It was great to listen to the conversation as a part of the panel here, and in particular to see colleagues from Tata Click talking together with us about how they've built the world's first phygital marketplace, a marketplace concept that is based on the strength of brick and mortar retail business. And I think that Chroma is also a fantastic example of a leading retailer here in India, where they've completely invented the concept of look, touch, and feel when it comes to the consumer durable space. But now that they've extended that into the digital channel, the digital and the physical are so closely connected that they no longer track e-commerce sales as a specific channel. Right? So when I look at these organizations, I look at existing organizations that have completely disrupted their categories and have gone through a complete transformation within their space. So it's very clear when we have this discussion with brands like these that digital is changing everything. It's very clear that customers are now influenced more by discussions through social media with their peers than they are by the brands themselves. It's clear that we have a new type of competition in the market, and we don't know whether our next competition from a retailer is going to come from a telco, from a pure play digital player, or from a cross-border commerce player from China. But what is very clear is that we have a new way of doing business, and the new way of doing business is the way of being obsessed with the customer. And I think it was a very interesting discussion before on what makes sense from a retail business. Does it make sense to be online? Does it make sense to be offline? For me, in the discussions that I've had with the retailers around the region, what they're focusing on, what drives success, is to be focused on where the customer is. If the customer is online, we need to be with the customer there. If the customer is offline, we need to be with the customer there. And clearly, the existing retailers that have the physical presence are of significant advantage in the market, because the ability to be able to launch into the online space is far easier than for an online retailer to launch into the offline space. And we've seen that obviously with Amazon's acquisition of Whole Foods, and with the discussion that we've had earlier, where we have distinct examples of online retailers now expanding into offline. Now, what we find globally when we speak to retailers and when we carry out surveys with retailers is that while there's clearly an understanding that it's important to be obsessed with the customer and to provide this seamless experience across channels and to be clearly present where the customer is, only 12% of retailers say that they are able to provide this seamless handoff across channels, from online to offline and back again. And typically, the reason behind that is because when you look at an existing brick and mortar retail business, you have many existing systems in place. You have loyalty systems, you have POS systems, you have content management systems, you have merchandising systems. I won't go through all of those because you're aware of what they are. And at the top of the slide here, we see the channels that we have in place of engagement with the customer in the store, online channels, through social media. And the issue is to be able to connect all of these channels together with all of the systems that are necessary to be able to provide the connected experience is something that's incredibly difficult to do. From our perspective, from SAP Hybris' perspective, this is the primary focus that we have. We attack the core of this problem. We provide a platform that enables you to connect the existing systems of record that keep the lights on in a brick and mortar retail business, and to connect those with the digital and the physical channels of engagement with the customer. Right? So we are an omnichannel platform. We are consolidating the customer information. We are consolidating the product information, and we're helping you to coordinate the fulfillment of the orders across those channels. So this is SAP Hybris, and the focus that we have on this space is why we are recognized by basically all of the ANAs as being the clear leaders in the omni-channel space from an enterprise perspective. Okay, this is my one marketing slide that I want to bring up. For the rest of the presentation, I'd like to talk about case studies and examples of how organizations have been through this type of transformation. And the first case study that I'd like to speak about is around the convergence of digital and physical channels. It's a pure omni-channel case study because this, for me, is the 101 of how we transform the customer experience. And the example that I'd like to use here is Aldo. And I'm in a very fortunate position that in the panel discussion just before me, we had a huge debate over which categories it makes sense to look at from a marketplace perspective. And I quickly changed my presentation so that I could focus on shoes, because I think that shoes is the perfect example of an omni-channel experience. I don't think Aldo needs much of an introduction here. We have a global, vertically integrated retailer headquartered out of Montreal that's focusing on shoes. Now, from a digital transformation perspective, where Aldo has begun their journey is firstly to reach out to their consumers and understand how the consumers are engaging with their brand. And I've included here the survey results from Aldo, and what they've found is that 88% of the target customers, the fashion seeking style seekers, that this is the Aldo's specific customer base that they're targeting, 88% of the target customers use mobile applications on a daily basis to browse and shop for fashion brands. So now I know when I'm at home in Singapore and I'm on the train on my way to work and every single person is looking at their phone, now I know what they're doing. Okay, they're looking for inspiration, 77% of them, and 44% of target customers are looking through this digital channel for some guidance on how to make a purchase. So essentially, when it comes to shoes, consumers are looking at how you match shoes with an outfit or how you match an outfit with shoes. It's all about content. Now, the second key finding that Aldo have had is the importance of the physical stores in their business strategy and in their engagement with the customer. The physical store is the only place where Aldo is able to completely immerse the customer within their brand and completely engage them, and the quality of the engagement through the store associate is what builds up the strength of their brand. Now, the type of trend that Aldo have seen within their stores is very similar to what I see across all retailers in India, which is that the volume of traffic, the quantity of traffic of footfall coming into the stores is reducing, but the quality of traffic of the customers coming into the stores is increasing. So the likelihood that a customer walking into the store is going to make a purchase is much higher than what it has been before as the volume of footfall is reducing. Now, based on the findings of the surveys that Aldo have had in reaching out to their consumers, they've put in place their omni-channel strategy. And the omni-channel strategy is based around two key facets. So the first is contextualization, or how they provide personalized experience based on content while they're engaging with their customers. And the second is autonomy, and autonomy is essentially how they empower their customers to be able to engage with them on their terms, whether this is digital or whether this is physical. And the first component of the omni-channel strategy that Aldo has rolled out is a mobile application. And I think essentially we probably all have mobile applications, so you will ask the question of what's so special about the way in which Aldo is doing this. Firstly, it is all about content. So the key aspect of the mobile application is the concept of a lookbook, which is helping the customers to match outfits with the shoes. And secondly, the mobile application is location aware. So that means that if the customer is outside the store or inside the store, the type of engagement and the capability is different. They're able to affect the pricing in a different way depending on which store the customer is in. And they are able to help the customer to engage with the product while they're in the store. So that means that as a customer, if I would like to try on a pair of shoes, I can use this mobile application to request to try on the pair of shoes that I would like to try on. Now, the success of this strategy is such that 20% of customers are engaging through a digital channel while they are in the store without being prompted by a store associate. 20% of customers. Right? So when we talk about the relevance of digital channels and engaging with digital channels when it comes to shoes as a category, right, then this is something that we can learn from. And secondly, 60% of the engagements that the store associates have with the customers is also supported by a digital channel. Okay, you see, what Aldo have done is they've rolled out a mobile application not only for their consumers, but secondly, they have rolled out a mobile application for the store associates so that while they're servicing the customer, they don't have to leave them. If a customer comes to me as a store associate, I can request that the customer will try on the pair of shoes and somebody will bring them from the storeroom, and I'm not going to give them the opportunity to escape out the store while I disappear from there. Okay. The next concept that Aldo have rolled out is the concept of the endless aisle. So when I walk into one of the flagship stores and I want to engage as a customer with their products and with their brands, I'm able to use the touchscreen endless aisle in order to see far more products than what are available on the shelves. But I'm also able to search for products in my size, in my category, and that match the outfit that I'm looking to buy my shoes for by engaging with the endless aisle in the store. Okay? Now, what's very interesting about the way in which Aldo have rolled out this endless aisle is that as a customer, I have the ability to transfer the shopping cart from the endless aisle down into my mobile application. So what is this now providing is an omni-channel concept that is not about online to offline, but we're now talking about offline to online. So if I'm in the store and I fall in love with a pair of shoes, then I have the ability to pass that to my shopping cart, not make a decision now, but once I go home and I share that with my friends and I get their feedback on how I'm going to look in that pair of shoes, I can make the purchasing decision then. And what's very interesting is that from a commerce perspective, one of the key business processes that we're always talking about is how we recover abandoned shopping carts. This is a key performance indicator. We look at the number of abandoned shopping carts. We look at how we recover abandoned shopping carts. From a physical brick and mortar retail perspective, we never have that discussion. But now what we can see from Aldo's perspective is they have the ability to engage a consumer in the store, for the consumer to engage in a digital channel while they're in the store, and then to be able to recover the dropped shopping cart after the consumer goes home. Right? So this is an omni-channel engagement strategy that we've seen a huge amount of success for when it comes to footwear. What are they in the process of rolling out in their labs? They have the concept of a living mirror where now I can see myself wearing the outfit together with the shoes. And we have the concept of the window where we can engage with the brand even while the store is closed. Right? So this is the type of success that we're seeing. The second concept that I would like to talk about is the concept of individualization, because I think from a customer engagement perspective, if we're able to provide the seamless omni-channel experience in connect online and offline, and we're able to provide a personalized content and personalized experience for the customer, then essentially we've reached nirvana, right? So this is the key concept of bringing together the customer transformation. I will let anybody guess which brand we want to speak about based on this slide, but obviously this is a typical luxury brand, and a brand where you will have a very high level of engagement with the customer before they make a purchasing decision. And when we talk about the engagement with the customer, typically that will be through a digital channel where you start to become inspired by the brand, and then through a physical channel where you actually try the product, you fall in love with the product, and you then make a purchasing decision. Now, what is interesting with this particular brand is that globally they have around 6 million customers, and globally they have around 100 million interactions with those customers per annum. So we can see that for each customer, they're engaging with them more than 10 times per annum. So obviously, this is not just around the purchasing decision on how I fall in love with the product and how I buy the product. This is around how I own the product, how I join the club, how I service the product, how I evangelize the product myself. Okay? Now, I think it is relatively well known, I hope it is well known, otherwise I'm not doing my job in the market in India, that Hybris is a leader when it comes to omnichannel and digital engagement. I think what we haven't done a good enough job of is letting the market here know that we are also a leader when it comes to personalization and when it comes to digital marketing as a part of that omnichannel strategy. So this is my one product slide that you need to forgive me for including in this presentation. But essentially what we can see here is that a brand like Porsche is able to connect together with the customer and to be able to record every interaction that the customer has across the digital channels together with the physical channels, and then through understanding that customer journey, they're able to engage with the customer in a new way. So the focus is no longer in how I run generic campaigns across my entire customer base. The focus is now on how I provide a personalized one-on-one engagement with the customer and an engagement that's based on personalized content. So if I can just quickly ask to play the video that only runs for 1 minute, and then we'll get an understanding of Porsche's strategy here, and then we can wrap up.
My name is Hagen Radowski. I'm the president and CEO of MHP, a Porsche company. Let me give you 3 KPIs. So KPI number 1 is we had an increase in our customer loyalty. So we're measuring that through our CRM system, by the way. And we had a 6% increase in customer loyalty. That's a lot. KPI number 2, we had an 80% increase in campaign effectiveness. That's pretty good. So that means we're driving down the costs of our campaign. And number 3, and probably the most important one, you think a Porsche sells on its own? Sometimes, but not always. So we are always chasing new prospects and trying to bring in new people to the brand. So our sales conversion rate increased 100% based on Hybris, which is great compared to campaigns we did before. Hybris marketing in 3 words is number 1, flexible, number 2, efficient, and number 3, result generating, which is the most important part.
So I think that that's a fantastic example from Porsche that shows when you're able to understand the customer by connecting with the customer through the digital channels and through the physical channels, and you're then able to focus on how you provide personalization in that engagement with the customer rather than just running outbound campaigns, then you're able to clearly increase your level of engagement, increase the quality of engagement, and therefore the level of loyalty with the customer. And you're then able to, in Porsche's case, double the effectiveness of the campaigns that they are running. Okay, I had my final slide that I was going to use to wrap up. But essentially, to wrap up, what I would like to say is that I think it's fascinating the type of transformation that we are seeing in the India market. It's fascinating the type of transformation that we're seeing around brands that are looking to become customer obsessed. And when we look at the opportunity of organizations to be able to harness that, then we see that the largest opportunity exists with the existing brick and mortar retailers in India, because that is where we can provide a truly differentiated customer experience through physical engagement as well as the digital engagement. And that is where we can innovate around the most relevant fulfillment models, especially when we are looking at products like fresh food that needs to be delivered locally, when we're looking at products like shoes that need to be tried on and that need to be returned and exchanged. Now, when you have an existing brick and mortar retailer and you want to transform that into a digital business, that is a complex process. And from Hybris's perspective, that is our key focus, is on simplifying that process and being able to engage organizations in doing that. So more than happy to continue this discussion. I don't think we'll have any times for questions because I'm about to get kicked off the stage very violently. But more than happy to continue the discussion at the at the booth that we have. So thank you again, everybody, very much for your time, and thanks for including us as a part of the event.